Hi, friends. Welcome to the Putting You Back Together Again show. I'm Rochelle Booker, aka Coach Ro.
And I'm CJ Joseph, CEEJAY, her part-time co-host. And as I usually say, I'm back in the building, y'all.
No. And as I say, welcome back.
Yeah.
Today's topic is another powerful episode of our debate stage series. Remember that one, how to hold on to our democracy? Well, this particular topic is going to focus on how to galvanize Black men to vote for Kamala Harris. Our show tonight is going to be electric as we talk about the real struggles that Black men, and to some degree men of color in general, have with voting for Kamala Harris. Why do so many Black men oppose or object to electing the first African-American female to the highest office in the nation? Well, I'm glad you asked. We're going to shine a light on this particular issue and get to the heart of the matter. And our three very special guests are going to help us do just that.
Yes.
We're only 1 week away from our election day, so it's important that we close this gap and galvanize people, in particular Black men, to vote for Kamala Harris. So we are going to introduce our three very special guests. Over to you, CJ.
Yes. The first guest is Dr. LAUREE Thomas, who is not a stranger to the show. Is a former Associate Dean for Student Diversity, Health, Equity, and Inclusion, and full Professor of Medicine at the UTMB John Seeley School of Medicine in Galveston, Texas. Currently semi-retired, has more than 35 years of identifying, including committing and graduating medical students, more particularly students of color. In her 23-year history at UTMB, Dr. Thomas secured federal grants, developed research training programs, and established a pipeline of programs directed towards the recruitment of a group of diverse and underrepresented students who mirror the population of the United States of America. Our second guest, Mr. RUEBEN ECKELS, Reverend RUEBEN ECKELS, raised in Wichita, Kansas, graduated from Wichita Southeast High School and Wichita State University. In 1996, he received his Master of Divinity degree from Payne Theological Seminary in Wilberforce, Ohio, while at Payne he received numerous honors. And those honors include Payne Seminary Best Senior Sermon Award, Preacher's Sermon,
Yes.
Preach it.
All right.
And a whole host of honors as well. And our in-house guest, brother I met chopped up while in the Father's Third Ward, Houston. Brother Otis Ian and Regalo, there we go. Our seasoned political strategist and community leader, expertise in strategic communication, civic engagement, and campaign management. Holds a Bachelor of Science in Political Science and the University of Chicago. Has made significant contributions to political strategy and public service in Texas. A passionate advocate for civic involvement and leadership development, he's also the youngest and first Black chair of the Harris County Democratic Party. That's saying something, y'all.
All right.
Wonderful.
Fanatic, political junkie, podcast enthusiast, and dedicated Houston fan. Thank you for your civic service.
Yeah.
And all three, welcome to Putting You Back Together Again.
Yes. Thank you guys for being here. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty with one of our virtual guests. So my apologies, viewing audience. Okay. Is that okay? I think I think we fixed the problem now. Thank you for that. Now, my second question is, Biden won 90% of black voters, 90% of black voters in 2020. And so he won by a very narrow margin. So, however, Trump is chipping away at her base, right? I mean, he's really cutting into the base that Kamala has, which he obviously, trying to pull the same numbers that Biden had. So, should we really be concerned about the numbers that are diminishing? How do you feel about that? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to see kind of how we're shaping these numbers, right? Particularly with our African American, our black population. I'm never worried about the black vote because the black vote is always going to vote our way, right? And that's the Democratic way. What I will say is that we can do a better job of talking about the issues that matter to our community, whether it's black women, black men, whether it's your aunts, your uncles, your nieces, your nephews, and the millennials and Gen Z. Student debt is a big thing. Housing affordability is a big thing. But not just like thinking about the current, but also thinking about the future. We're not losing black voters at the rate as people would like to put it out there. Right. And so I think that's what's really important. That's why you have President Barack Obama talking to black men specifically. It's like, listen, we might lose other populations and things like that, but we need black men to step up and vote in droves, just like you did for me when I ran for president, right? Or anybody else. Yeah. And that's what's really key. It's not so much that we're losing the black vote. It's just more so we need more of the black vote because we have to be relying on other populations that might not necessarily or historically.
Yes. One quick thing. Is he still on the phone? Is the phone still on?
Yes. We'll call back. We'll call you back in just a second, sir.
Okay, there we go. All right, because we want to make sure our listeners are hearing what we are saying as well. We also want to make sure we hear Brother Ruben. But what I feel is sometimes the media will put out a narrative.
Correct.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Not to be true, right? But they want to sway it to a certain degree that causes an alarm.
Correct.
Right? So, but is it, historically speaking, black men, from understanding, don't typically go out and vote in droves? Is that correct?
No, they do.
They
black,
do.
Black
Okay.
men vote. Yeah. Black men vote droves. In fact, black women are voting 9-1. Black men are right behind, voting 8-2 for the Democratic Party. In fact, I always say this: the black vote is not just the most consistent for Democrats; it's the most consistent. Period.
Wow.
White people don't vote at the rate they do for the Republican Party as black voters do for the Democratic Party.
Wow.
It's instilled in us, right? I mean, and I am sitting here with elders that have more wisdom than I have, that have been around longer than I have. But it's been ingrained in us, civil rights, right? Is how do we get our equality? How do we get equity? How do we get housing? How do we get to be in school and drink from the same water fountain, right? All of these goes back to policy and voting and bills that have been written. Yeah. And that was the things that you saw from our forefathers in the civil rights era, is that, hey, vote, 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 vote. So that's why you have your auntie, your grandmother, your uncle. Hey, at the end of the day, if you want to complain about something, better go vote.
And I agree, except for the midterms. I don't see such a strong turnout with midterms. But also, and Lauree, we're going to pull you into the conversation. But if what you're saying is true, that there's such a strong turnout, just about every year, especially every 4, why then is Kamala Harris's campaign panicking? Why are they trying to make this big push to really engage and reach and target black men if they don't feel that there's a potential threat there of losing an election because there may not be a big enough turnout? Why do you think they're overreacting, or?
Yeah, I can answer. I didn't know if you
and then go ahead, Dr. Lauree, and then we'll have Otis comment as well.
Well, hello, everyone, and I'm so happy to be a part of this wonderful conversation regarding black men and their ability to vote and step up. Well, first of all, let me just say up front, I have 100% faith in our black men. They have always been a reliable background backbone of the African American community. And I feel for sure in my heart that they will step up to the plate and participate, if not on the same level as our African American women, I'm pretty sure that they will come step up to the plate. The very interesting concept that Black men are not favoring Kamala Harris, I think, is rooted in the old mystical idea that they do not support our Black women. And I really take issue with that. The one thing that I feel very strongly about is that when push comes down to shove, they understand what are the consequential effects of this election. And I feel very certain that they will step in. Now, I think former First Lady Michelle Obama gave a very eloquent disposition. This was a talk a couple of days ago about Black men and why we should galvanize them to the polls to vote. And to echo her sentiments along the same lines is that in terms of reproductive rights, I think when Black men understand that they will step up and be wonderful participants in this election cycle. If they love us, as she said, if they are really concerned about their wives, their daughters, their grandmothers, their aunts, their nieces, then they will certainly understand that it is critically important that they participate in a higher number and vote for Harris. And let's forget about this misogynistic attempt by the media to say that Black men are not supporting Kamala Harris. I really take issue with that. I really think that at the end of the day, that they will be very active participants because of what is so at stake in their own lives, not only in their lives and the women that they love, but the overall African American community. And I feel very strongly that they will be very active participants.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Dr. LAUREE.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that, Dr. LAUREE, because that's so important for folks to understand is that Black men are voting for us. I don't want to speak for anybody else. Black men are voting the right way. Well, and also too, they're voting. Right. That's most important. They're voting, one, but they're also voting the way that we'd like them to vote. And the reason why Vice President Kamala Harris is so Black men in particular, because it makes up the market. That's what's important, is that it makes up the margin to do this. And so you're looking at.
We have a caller. Hi, caller. Thank you for calling in. Who are we speaking with?
My name is Marcus. How's it going, guys?
Oh,
Hey,
hi,
Marcus. Thanks
Marcus.
for calling in.
Yeah. What's on your mind? Talk to us.
I just love that we're talking about our presidential election and our choice. We live in a great country, so I just think it's so great that we all get to share our opinions and, move forward together, even if we might not agree with the choices the other party took.
Right. Absolutely. Now, Marcus, do you plan on voting next week on Tuesday, or have you already?
I voted this morning before I went to work.
All right. Awesome.
What was his comment? He's planning to do.
You said you already did, right? Or you're planning to do
Yes,
it?
ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Well, excellent. You have a comment on Marcus or a question?
Can you hear
Yeah,
it?
I love the. Yes, I can. I love the lady speaking before. She spoke very eloquently and spoke on some of the points that Michelle Obama made when she was at the podium. But I do think it's really important to hear from the people we're speaking for, like how they are feeling and why they are doing what they're doing, instead of like hearing it from some lady why some guy's doing something. I'd rather hear from some guy why he's doing what he's doing. I don't think we need anyone to speak for us as men in our country or as our race either. So like we don't need anyone like taking words out of our mouths and telling us what we should or shouldn't be doing. And I feel like this because like you're asking, well, we as voters are asking for help from men and women on topics that affect us.
Yeah.
And then we're saying to the same people we're asking for help from the vote, well, your voice doesn't matter on this situation because you're not XYZ, maybe you're not a woman or you're not this and you're not that. So it's very weird that my voice is kind of like silenced and then told what to do at the same time. Because when it's heard from the other party that that's what we're doing, they're calling it oppression. So as a black man, I hate being spoken for and told I should have to vote for Kamala Harris because I'm black. I hate hearing that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And
No,
Marcus,
that's
and I talked about that on my show a few weeks ago about identity politics. And identity politics has been going on for a long time, that we should just vote, vote for the person that we most closely identify as a race. How do you feel about that, Otis? I mean, is that something that we've just been programmed, conditioned to do, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think that historically,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I do feel there's a little bit of conditioning in there, but it is up to us as Americans, as just human beings to seek the information fully that we're searching for, and then to apply it as best we can.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that, Marcus.
Thank you so much for calling in.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Marcus called in and talked a little bit about that. Listen, I think that part of it is that, yeah, there's a little bit of conditioning, but it's not just the Black community, right? And I think that one of the things that we have to grapple with as a community, particularly Black Americans and just Black anyone here in this country, is that we're harder on ourselves and people are harder on us than any other race. I mean, that's
absolutely.
That is just the truth, because the reality is that I think when people are looking for perfection from government and politics, we should look for that. I mean, the founding fathers in their wisdom, and trust me, they had a lot of faults themselves. Sure. Didn't say in the Constitution we're trying to form a more perfect union, right? And every day we're trying to be more perfect, right? So it's never going to be perfect. There's going to be some people that are going to fall through the cracks. There's going to be some people in margins. There's going to be some people disenfranchised. But it's our job to put the education out there and making sure that people are aware of what's going on. Don't fall for the misinformation.
That's it.
Don't fall for some of the conditioning that's out there.
Right.
Read, and if you can't, get someone around you who may know a little bit. Get more in tune with the education that's out there, whether it's watching the news, whether it's reading a newspaper. There's still a lot of things out there to put information out there that we should definitely be diving into and really relying on, and not just relying on this whole, oh, they don't ever do anything for us and this. It's not true. One of the biggest things that's happened is we talk about student debt, for instance.
Oh yeah.
Student debt, you know who has significantly been impacted by the canceling of student debt from this administration?
Black folks.
Black folks.
Yes.
Who have the highest interest rates on their student loans. It's been Black folks, not even close. I mean, that has helped a lot of people. And sometimes it may not be tangible to you personally. It's helping the community, which helps us now go to the house, now allows you to take care of kids that you have, allows you to go buy land, which is the greatest form of wealth in this country, right? It leads to all these other things. So those are the things and the conversations that we're trying to have.
Yeah, it leads to, and that's a good point, it leads to access.
Right.
Access that we've probably never had before.
Right.
So if that is true, and Dr. Thomas or Ruben, I want you guys to weigh in as well. If that's so true, why is there so much pushback to wanting to support the first African-American woman in the nation's history? So that's where that's where the disconnect that I'm starting to see. So much has progressed for our community, but yet we're pushing back on the very candidate who's trying to do even more to give us more access to equality and equity. So I think there's where the disconnect is. Ruben, can you or
Yes.
Can you
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now we can, yes.
No, you can. Okay. All right. It's good to be here. Again, my name is Ruben Eccles. I work. I actually commute back and forth. I work remotely from Wichita, Kansas, but my office is actually in DC. I work on policies around hunger, housing, voting rights, reparations, and so I work specifically with many faith organizations that are really involved in trying to move communities to vote with a faith democracy. And one of the things that we've been hearing, and I think that many of us have been hearing, is that our Black men want to see what they believe should be a Black agenda. something that speaks specifically to the Black African American community, because we have been a loyal voting bloc for the Democratic Party for years, basically since 1964. After Fannie Lou Hamer went and basically busted open the doors to the Democratic Party, and we became part of, at that time, the most powerful party in the world.
Right.
So when she busted open the doors, at the same time, there was a little Black girl that was being born in 1964, and her name was Kamala Harris. And she opened up that door for history to be made, because it opened up the doors again for others to begin to run for office, begin to get office as the first Black mayors of cities like in Ohio, and then DC. Then we saw also in Chicago. We saw the first Black governor in Virginia, and all these gains and these first and this shift of African Americans from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party was because of that busting up of the door by Fannie Lou Hamer and others. And since that time, we have been loyal to the Democratic Party, because we have seen, not because they're just we're on any type of plantation, but because we think and we understand that the party that has had at least some benefit for our interests has come through the Democratic Party. But we know that both parties can do more. And so that is what I think that the African-American males are saying. Men are saying, they're not just saying we won't vote for Kamala Harris, but they say we want to see you do more. And so they want to see that Black agenda, because the right has done a very good job of saying, see, the Democratic Party, they're doing things for the LGBT community, which many folks are Black. They're doing things for the Asian community. They're doing things for the Native American community. They're doing things for women, which many are Black. But for Black people, there's no Black agenda. They can't even say Black. And that's one of the biggest issues and biggest problems. Because as we try to, hello?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, but back to we're doing a lot for women. What about the reproductive rights that they're trying to roll back and take from us? So that's not
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is so important for Black families, and trying to make sure that Black women have the right prenatal care, have the right, when people talk about pro-life, they forget that prenatal care is pro-life. They forget that health care is pro-life. They forget many of the things that and jobs are pro-life. And so when we talk about women's rights, it goes beyond just their womb, but also on how we can make sure that they have a better quality of life, because it takes care of families, Black families. And so,
Mr. Ruben?
Yes.
Please hold just a second. We have a caller.
We have a caller. We'll get right back to you.
Okay.
Hi, caller. Thank you for calling into the show. Who are we speaking with?
This is Matthew. You don't have is this a Zoom meeting?
Yeah, we're on the radio show. We have two virtual guests and one in-house or in-studio guest. Did you have a question?
Oh, studio guest.
Yes.
What's your question, Matthew?
Oh, I was trying to listen to the program. Sorry.
Okay, well, continue to, we're going to disconnect for now, but going to continue to listen in, okay?
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
You can go to Real Talk 100 Radio LLC and listen on YouTube or Facebook, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And before we jump back into the conversation, we're going to jump into a quick commercial break because we got to pay some bills, y'all. Yes. We're having a phenomenal, vibrant conversation. We'll continue to jump into that. So Malcolm, take us to that commercial break, sir.
Yes, sir.
Would you do it on the good enough? without you for the night, without hearing all about it. Tell me that you doubt it, all the that we did in the past.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for joining us. If you missed the first half of the show, we are talking about the debate stage, how to protect our democracy, and how to galvanize Black men to vote for Kamala Harris. So we're having a really great discussion with our three panelists. And now I just sort of want to pivot to, you guys talked a little bit about disinformation, right? And a lot of that's been going on. So, Ruben, if you can adjust your volume, we're getting a lot of feedback. You might have to turn it off. We're getting a lot. So we're having a lot of disinformation. Thank you, sir. About what the Democratic Party really represents, what they're trying to do. But at the same time, we've got Trump flipping on or pivoting away from Project 2025. So how do you, or if you could advise Kamala Harris's campaign to put more focus and shine a light on the negative things that are going to come out of 2025, if that agenda is pushed forward, how would you recommend her to do that? Because I think it's getting lost in all this discussion about, what the Republican Party is trying to do and how they want to, support people of color. But if that agenda and initiative is pushed through, it's not going to help people of color. It's going to do just the opposite. So how can they actually, amplify that message?
You know what's funny, Coach Rose, that I was just having lunch with someone talking about Project 2025.
All right.
And what I would tell you is that one of the things that I've been able to do is go to different churches to talk about it, because they've been polling their congregation about things that they want to be talked about leading up to the election. And Project 2025 is like at the top of the list. Right. Listen, I think that Project 2025 is so unpopular, and Donald Trump can't run from it because his vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, comes from the school that wrote the whole playbook. Right? That's right. He did. And so they try to run from it, but they can't. What I would tell you is that I do think that a big piece of Project 2025 that they are making inroads is talking about reproductive freedom, right? It's getting rid of the Health and Human Services and creating a Department of Life. And then you saw it play out in Texas. And I can speak from this because I worked in the legislature, and you saw the total abortion ban. Yeah. You see the rollback in Medicaid expansion, which is supposed to help Black people, particularly Black women who are dealing with maternal mortality or dealing with maternal health here in Texas. The only good thing they've done is just expand Medicaid for postpartum for women, and only at 12 months. We can do better than that in Texas. Right. But they've really honed in on this reproductive freedom message, which is a big part of Project 2025, and I think it's taking shape. Project 2025 is a 900-page document.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a lot to get
a lot to digest.
And people are trying to figure it out. But there are things that you hear from here and there talking about it. But the big part of that is the reproductive freedom. Because once you start scaling back that reproductive freedom, now it's segregating schools all over again. Now it's messing with the LGBTQIA community. Now it's messing with women as they're doing with reproductive freedom. But now it's freedom at the ballot box, right? You see all these things. So it starts to roll back, and it's the first thing. And so it leads to other things as well.
Yes, taking us back to Jim Crow era.
That's right.
Yeah, and not even with.
We have a comment right quick. Oh, from Riz Taylor. Ruben was talking that talk. Yes, Ruben, you were talking that talk. Yeah.
I have a comment, because I think this is critically important, and I really don't want our African American men to lose sight of the fact that the Supreme Court of the United States has granted the president absolute power and authority, immunity in the sense that anything that is done in the line of duty as a president is forgiven. So in my terms, that's power. So how does this pertain to our African American men? Let's look at police brutality. If Trump is elected, believe me, he will designate and give absolute authority to our police force to do whatever they want to do. And guess what? They will be covered. So in terms of police immunity, you can forget all of the laws that have been generated to try and protect us from police brutality, police interference in our lives. And Black men and other men of color are particularly susceptible to the vagaries of our police department. So, if nothing else, we need to consider that entity as an absolute detriment to our own life, and especially as it pertains to Black men. We know that traffic light stops. What happens? It ends in, sometimes more often than not, death of our African American men, simply because something goes wrong. And so if you look at voting for Trump just from that particular angle, protect your own interest, do what is in your best interest in terms of voting for Harris. Now, many men I've heard have said, well, I'm afraid that she's a prosecutor and she's going to put us in jail. Well, you can't go to jail if you don't commit a crime, as far as I'm concerned. But no, that's absolutely true. So I think in terms of Project 25, from just the vagaries of having absolute power and authority as a dictator or as a fascist would have, as in Trump, that our lives will be really turned upside down.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Laurie.
Go
ahead.
One of the things I hear from African American men is that they would point out that former President Trump signed the First Step Act, which allowed which saw many African Americans be freed from prisons, and they point to some rappers and different things like that. But what they need to understand, what we need to understand, is that everything that Trump does on the front side for publicity, on the backside, he puts in policies that actually counteract what he just did. And so he put in he signed the First Step Act, and as he's actually putting in and appointing federal judges that are strict, basically law and order, so-called judges. And these judges, many times, along with the police department, we get convicted and we get sentenced longer than anybody else for the same type of crimes. We also are seeing they are criminalizing homelessness and being houseless. So that's going to put a whole lot of Black men in jail who are trying to find jobs. It's basically going back, as you said, to Jim Crow era, and that era was they had a vagrancy law where you could be put in jail just for being on the corners, for being in different places. And that's what, and Trump has said, I want to go back to the place where Giuliani had in New York, stop and frisk, that we can just pull folks over without any type of warrant, without any type of suspicion of a crime, just pull them over and say, just make up stuff. And so we need to understand that if you look at every policy that Trump and his folks have put in place, they have on the backside gutted. They gutted funding. At the same, folks talk about his record on HBCUs and the money that he spent with and get. The only reason that money was in the budget was because of Alma Adams, who actually fought to get that money put back in because Trump had took it out of the budget. And he only signed it because the pressure that he was getting from Black communities, and also because he was trying to also pass another bill that was that line item that was in there. So everything that he does. And so again, I'm not saying who you need to vote for, but I'm saying that the policies that have been put in place have been policies that on one side that is detrimental to the African American community. The other side, we have the Kamala Harris and Biden administration. They put in basically $4 billion for Black farmers, the first time ever for funding of Black farmers. And what happened was the Republican Party said that's discrimination against white farmers, and so they go in and they fought against it. And so they cut that money down to $2 billion, but it was still a life saver, saver for many Black farmers to buy equipment and to stay alive. And so we need to understand, again, there are so many policies like that get gutted because they are have been specifically for targeting black people and black communities. And so I'll just stop right there.
Just to,
Go ahead. I was just going to say, this is what we're talking about, empowerment. You've got to educate yourself so you can be empowered to make the right decision. Right? Okay, we've got a comment here.
I was just going to bring up the fact that that money has already been started to have been disseminated to especially black farmers in the South. And they are already reaping the benefits of that bill. I wanted to go in. I just saw the chat note about massive deportation because of immigration and such like that. And what I want to make sure that we all understand is that the dialogue against massive deportation is particularly aimed at people of color. And we need to take issue with the fact that the immigrants might be the first ones to go, but they will be people of color. And if you look at the fact, especially for Haitians, even and with absolute authority, they will have the authority to round up 11 million immigrants in this country and send them out. Now, who do you think will be adversely impacted and affected due to though it's not a policy just yet, but Trump has made it very well known that that's one of his primary intents. And the first thing that he wants to do is ship out the Haitian immigrants in Springfield. And that's that is just so absurd that he would think of doing that. And let me just tell you, he started with them and he will go right on to Latinos. And guess what? African Americans will certainly be on his list too.
Yeah, good point, Dr. Laurie. And to that, a segue to that point about mass deportation. And he's saying because the immigrants are creating all these or committing all these crimes. Okay, so I've got an issue with that. You're saying that they're violent and creating all of these crimes, right? Okay, if that, and they're high risk. What about all of these white men, predominantly white men, doing these mass shootings in these schools? Right. Why isn't he talking about that?
Well.
and the two people who attempted assassinations on him were white males, and they were Republicans.
Right. So why aren't white males a threat? And this is not, I'm not talking about any discrimination here. I'm just trying to keep it real. The Republicans talk about a certain group of people are high risk and a threat to our safety here in the U.S. But you've got white males committing all these, killings in these schools, mass killings. But how come nothing's talked about there?
Well, that's easy, right? It's that they've been talking about keeping the blood of America as pure as possible. So the biggest threat isn't the white males that are shooting up schools. The biggest threats are the immigrants that are coming across the border trying to make a living for their families, right? You're trying to keep America as pure as it possibly can be. You saw it early, they were making jokes about Puerto Ricans, who are Americans, by the way. Who are Americans, by the way, and making derogatory remarks about how, it's just a big old garbage can. And it's pretty much just a cesspool, a floating garbage. Like these are the things that they say because, again, it's talking about the purity of America. Wow. It's what they've talked about. Donald Trump said in 2016, he said this in his first campaign election cycle, that the whole he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and he could win the presidency. He liked the good old days, right? And the good old days, we're not talking about 2000, we're talking about 1960, talking about 1950. His
pre-civil rights.
Right. His minions here in Texas, like Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has said, they missed when it was the 1960s. I mean, they're telling us over and over again and out loud where they're trying to go. And you see the policies that are happening. You see, and I'm glad that Ruben Eckels and Dr. Laurie are talking about federal legislation that's happening as well too in DC. What I want to add is paying attention to local legislation that's happening in Texas. Listen, the abortion ban didn't come from DC. It came from Austin, Texas. Texas is a guinea pig. We are a lab for what the far right wants to do in the rest of the country. Look at how they've scaled back voting rights. Look at how they've gone after the LGBT community. Look at what they've done to, again, the abortion ban, what they're doing to women. It starts right here in Texas. It's local. And that's why when you're going to the ballot box, don't just think about the president. Don't just
Right,
think about
that's
the
right.
United States. Think about your state legislator. Think about your city council person. Think about people that are local. Tip O'Neill used to be the former Speaker of the House. Would tell us all the time, all politics is local. And the more local, the closer it is to your door, the more it impacts you. And so thinking about those things and what's going on is really important. But to your original question, for me, it's talking about the purity of America and trying to keep it as clean as possible.
Keep it clean, but so it has nothing to do with crime and violence. This is making America white again.
Yeah.
So strike out gray and put make America white again. Because if this had anything to do with our safety and about violence and crimes being committed, then they would be shining a light on these mass killings that white males are committing in these schools. There's no talk about it. And because the NRA is funding, they're in bed with these Republican politics.
Yeah.
You gotta follow the money. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I say that two things? Donald Trump in his speech actually said where America was great, and he said it was 1790. That's before the Civil War. He literally saying we need to go back to 1790, back to before there were before the emancipation, before the Civil War, back when there was slavery. And he said that he literally gave the date. Secondly, I like to tell stories. As a preacher, you're always telling stories because they stick with people. And there's a story that is if people who want to, when Donald Trump said that he was trying to save black jobs, he always, whenever he makes an accusation, it's actually a confession. And so he made an accusation that Latinos and other people, immigrants, were coming over here stealing our jobs. When in fact, Donald Trump hired to build his hotels in New York. He hired a Polish firm, an all-white firm, to block black and brown people from working at his hotels.
Wow.
But the thing about it was those same Polish white workers, immigrant workers, they then turned around and they sued Donald Trump because he even cheated them. And they had to pay $1.4 million because he cheated them. This is the type of policies that this man has. And again, I can't tell I have to say it before my organization. I can't tell anybody who to vote for. But I always say we have to also make sure. And I think, and to the Black brothers' credit, I go to. We're having Soul to the Polls by the churches coming up. We're also having Stroll to the Polls by the Divine Nine. And I went to the event in DC with Black the fraternities. I'm a Phi Beta Sigma myself. I was with those brothers, and it was a packed house. It was brothers wall to wall saying we're gonna get out to vote. And so it's happening across but the one thing that we do have to do, and I think it's important that as we talk about the policies of Donald Trump, we always have to make the other party also accountable. And I think that's what black men want to see. They just want to make sure that Kamala Harris and VP Harris make sure that they stay committed to what they say. Because if you remember what President Obama said, President Obama said, yeah, I did promise a lot of stuff. He said, but you got to make me keep my promise. And so that is what we need to do on both sides. But as we dispel this, as we dispel the disinformation that is out there, because it's plenty, we need to know that it is the Harris campaign has done an excellent job on social media, around TikTok, around different things. So they're doing a lot of things to dispel this the disinformation. And the biggest October surprise, and I'll shut up, has been that Madison Square Garden rally.
Yeah.
That was huge, and now we need to capitalize on it.
We need to capitalize on it. Yeah.
He talked about the date that Donald gave in regards to going back to that time. What we have to realize is women were not eligible to vote back then.
Right.
Even
Amen.
though
Mhm.
there, but women were not. Only rich white men were allowed to vote back then. So not just even a color thing, but just a people
Right.
thing. So
Amen.
women have to realize that if you're going back to that, he's
Yeah,
also
yeah.
talking about
Are we
you
okay?
too.
Yeah. Are we okay, Malcolm? Are we good? Okay. Yeah.
So we
you
always
have to
also
talk
talking about
that.
those things
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And then when you're looking at a president, and maybe you all can speak to this, a president can only do so much with the support of the Senate.
Are we on? We look like we're
Right? Because you're going to have those individuals where they will block what that president is trying to do.
Right, and you saw that with President Obama, right?
Exactly.
Is that he was able to do one of the most consequential things with a House and a Senate that was Democratic as well too, and that was to give us the Affordable Care Act, right?
Yes.
AKA Obamacare.
Yes.
But then when he lost that because of the Tea Party wave, you saw the obstruction, and it ultimately led to the most obstructionist thing we ever saw, and that was him not being able to put someone on the Supreme Court.
Right.
And yes, there's a bunch of other things that happened, and for other folks as well too, but that was the biggest thing. And so that's why voting down ballot is so important.
Yeah.
Again, not just about the top of the ticket. The president can only do so much. If the legislative branch, who controls the purse, by the way, and controls the money, isn't in sync with the president, you're not going to get anything done. And then the judiciary, no matter whatever Democrat, Republican president you have, whatever president was able to put the Supreme Court justices in that court, it's going to be that agenda. Why you see the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and you've seen the overturning of some fundamental rights that we've had through the courts. So that's why, again, it's so important to really talk about the down ballot, not just the top of the ticket. That's a sexy thing. That's a thing that gets spent the most money on. That's the commercials we see all the time. But voting down ballot, because again, all politics is local, but then also these branches check and balance each other and work together in ways that we don't think.
And that's what, and people, that's why I brought up, if you, we were talking earlier about the midterms. We don't tend to have the high turnouts as we do in the presidential elections.
Yeah, because the money's not
there. I know the money's not there, but they don't understand that's voting for these senators, these folks, these congressmen. So if we want to maintain control of Congress, we've got to get out and vote every chance we get. So it's people, it's a house. You want to maintain the house. If we want to get the house back, we've got to vote. If we want, change out the speakers, if we want to maintain power in the Senate, we've got to vote. But typically, we only turn out every 4 years, and people aren't understanding the impact of the midterm election either.
That's right.
So that's what.
One comment that I'd like to make.
Yeah, go ahead.
One comment that I'd like to make. I was at the car wash a couple of days ago, and I was struck by this elderly gentleman who looked to be very effective and productive. And so I struck up a conversation with him. And of course, I asked him, I said, well, who do you plan to vote for? And I really thought that he was going to say, my vote does not count. Instead, he emphasized that I'm voting for Kamala Harris because I'd rather vote for a Black African-American female than a 34-count convicted felon who would not even give a triple crab a cane to walk with. And I thought, oh my God. And I wanted to engage him in this conversation a little bit more as to what would we say now to people who, not just Black men, but to everybody who says my vote will not count. How do we get them away from that idea that they don't have power? We need to emphasize that all of us have collective power when we collaborate and vote as a group, as a block of people, and of course, with collaborative politics with our Hispanics, with our Native Americans. We have the power to change the course and direction of this country so that we will never go back. Instead, we will go forward.
Absolutely. Exactly. Excellent. Well Thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Thomas. That's excellent. So we still have a lot of progress. Yeah, we've taken a few steps forward, but not enough.
Right.
We still need progress and productivity. So that's why it's so important, guys, and I'm talking to the viewing audience, to vote for the right people that are going to make the impact and take us forward, right? And this to help us build a future, not take us backward.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So Okay, all this is important. And that's why, you know, we do have to make informed decisions. And I absolutely agree about identity politics. Don't vote just because you're Black and Kamala is Black. Don't just vote for her because of that, but vote for her because she's trying to do the right thing for our communities and for people of color. You know, we've got to have people in office who are trying to unite us and not divide us. And so it concerns me when you've got people making racial remarks, racial rhetoric, and you support this candidate, but then you say you're not a racist. So how is that okay?
Yeah, I think it's
It's hypocritical.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the conversation that's been around, but this election is close because there still is a big chunk of the country that believes that. In fact, there's a big chunk of the country that'll tell you, "Oh, they're just joking."
They dismiss it.
They're just joking.
Wow.
That comment at Madison Square Garden about Puerto Ricans
and
Black folks as well too. Yeah. Just a joke.
And then Donald Trump said he didn't even hear it.
Right. That's right. That's right.
It's unbelievable. The flex. Yeah. There's never any accountability.
It's gaslighting the American people, and that's what he's done since he's started running for president, starting in 2015. Was just gaslight the American people. And that's where people have to and that's where people again. It's incumbent on us to get that information out, hold folks accountable, make sure that you're voting, making sure that you're telling other people to vote. But also, most importantly, and what we challenge people to do as well too, is that there's an opportunity of growth to really give information to folks, but you have to be uncomfortable.
That's true. I love that.
You have to be uncomfortable to have these conversations with people. When you're having conversations with fellow Black men, there's a conversation that's going to be had. Like we're going to be in the barbershop. It's going to be a conversation like, who's the best basketball player ever, LeBron or Michael Jordan? It's one of those things, right? Same thing with Black women. Same thing having that conversations with people who aren't in our community. Why it's important. Like for us, I always tell folks all the time, right? There's this brown and Black divide, and you're trying to find like, hey, how can we help each other out? And I tell folks, most of the time when you were dealing with immigration, you are dealing more so with a brown population, right? And so when I would go to high schools and talking to 17-year-olds or 18-year-olds who are going to be able to vote and say, hey, why does your vote matter? I say, hey, look around your classmates right now. There are some people who won't tell you, but they can't vote. Their parents can't vote. So you're their voice at the ballot box. You're the one who things for them when they're trying to do it. And so their eyes like open up and they're like, oh, I never thought of that. It's like, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so that's, trying to find those commonalities, because at the end of the day, everyone's trying to make America better, right? Everyone's trying to make Texas better. Now, we all have our different definitions of that and our different approaches to that for sure, but trying to find those commonalities so that way you can say, hey, your vote matters because this. And so that's what's super important for us.
Will someone please help me to understand why is it that Christians support individuals who lie, steal, and cheat? Well, please help me with the contextual framework of what we need to say to those individuals that call themselves evangelicals or Christians, and yet they will support someone who lies consistently, who is a pathological liar, who is a sociopath. How do we frame the questions about their belief and their faith from a Christian standpoint?
Excellent point. And Ruben, I want you to take that because you're a former pastor, and I want you to emphasize Christian nationalism. That's where I want to go with this. Can you talk about that Christian nationalism that ties into Laurie's question, Dr. Laurie's question?
Absolutely. Again, I'm a Payneite, Payne Theological Seminary in Ohio. It is the only freestanding African American theological school in the country. And so what I came up under was the liberation theology. And so there are different types of theologies that have been taught down through history, from Calvinists, and basically we saw a theology in the last few years of material, prophet theologians, and so historically we know that Christianity has been used as a tool and many times to control people, and it was used as from the slave master to make sure folks were peaceful and humble, and they did not rebel. But as we know, we had Denmark Vesey, we had other freedom fighters who took that liberation theology and said, no, we are talking about liberation for Black people, and theology for Black people, and God for Black people, Jesus for Black people is of the oppressed. And he is the freedom, and he speaks to taking those chains off. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and I've come to set the captives free. And so we believe, Black folks believe that our Jesus believed in a freedom, while others believe that it was a tool for power and maintaining power. And so, as we even just celebrated, as some celebrated Christopher Columbus Day, and this Christian who came to this country on ships called Jesus and Santa Maria, and came to enslave and destroy a whole race of people, committing genocide. And so, really, I always say that African American people actually taught this country real Christianity of how to love thy neighbor, how to forgive, how to the church. As we know, the Black church was used as you brought your tithes and offerings the early inception was to build community. It became the instrument of freedom, and that's why they banned churches in South Carolina, Black churches in South Carolina. They banned churches around the country because they were talking about, when they preached about Jesus, they preached about freedom and caused folks to say, we're going to stand up. And that's why we had a civil rights movement. And that civil rights movement, as we know, Dr. King, one of his biggest thorns in his side were liberal churches who were supposed to speak up for freedom, who said they wanted to be to practice equality. But Dr. King had to admonish them because they were still steep in racism. And this country has been tied to racism because racism is directly connected to capitalism, and capitalism is the exploitation of people. And so, and it is not just the exploitation of Black folk, but poor folk. And one of the things that we do not like to talk about, we'll talk about them. If you listen, even on the Democratic side, you've heard middle class, you've heard upper class, but you haven't heard about the poor folk. And there's not been a conversation, and that is what Dr. King talked about. And when he said we have a check that I refuse to believe that this check that was written to Black folks, as wealthy as this country is, could ever come back void. So as we begin to continue to strive and open up doors, what the Christian nationalism believe that they receive less, even though they preach. If you go into a evangelical church, they'll preach God's abundance. They'll talk about how good God is and how God can provide all of your needs, except if you're Black folk, except if you're immigrants, except if you're other. And so that it goes back to your earlier statement, Rochelle. It was about white, and particularly white Christians, believing that this country is getting too brown, is getting too Black, and so Donald Trump particularly was keen in understanding that capitalism and racism go hand in hand. And if I'm gonna make this money, I gotta remind them of a time when white males, as my brother said, rich white males made all the decisions, and they used Christianity as a tool to say they were closest to God. And so we saw white imagery that backs this up. And so we have to begin to, as the Bible says, be ye transformed by the renewing of the mind. And we have to continue to renew the minds of even many of our church folk, because there are. I talked to a Black woman today, and she said to me that she was not going to vote for Kamala Harris because because a woman should not be in leadership. And so I asked her the question. I said, so you're telling me that if you were with Harriet Tubman, you would have stayed on the plantation because it wasn't a black male
Leading
in
you.
leadership? And she went blank on me. I said, answer me this question. That means you would have to take out the book of Esther. And when that black woman became, and it says such a time as this was her time to lead. And I said, so you literally have been taught and brainwashed by a theology that keeps you not humble, but keeps you subservient. And we have been teaching if you are in a black church, we are teaching power. And that power, we believe, comes through our love for one another. It comes through our trust in one another. It comes through our belief in families, which they have and this country has done an incredible job of breaking down our communities and feeding us things that continue to divide us. And the one thing that changes anything is unity.
Yes.
Bless.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, excellent. Excellent. Yeah, because we are stronger together. We are stronger together. We never would have had civil rights. And to be sure, civil rights wasn't just a fight for black folks. White people joined in on it too. So yeah, we're not just gonna take all the credit, but I'm saying we have some strong black leaders that made the sacrificed their life, shed blood, died, and all of that to make a change for our future.
And I have to say, I also have to say, I work with a number of groups on reparations, and it's incredible that there is a theological undertone of why reparations are so important. It goes to not only to the souls of our country, of our nation, as they make and repent of the original sin of racism and slavery in this country. It also then begins to, if we had HR 40, which is the study of reparations, any group that has ever had reparations that had to have a study first. And so we have to have that study that's to be done. And through that, we would be able to undergird our communities. Sometimes it might be a check. Other times it's about building institutions that would further our progress. And so we have we put pressure on the Harris and Biden administration. We got up to before we're doing actually Trump's presidency. And first year, we actually got up to 218 votes in the House. But because we did not have the Senate, we knew that it would not pass. And I think that's why Nancy Pelosi did not send it over and have the vote. But the political will is there. If we continue to, as my brother said, we have to vote not just on the top of the ticket, but we have to vote to get to get that Senate and the House. Because if we get the Senate and the House, the groundwork is already there for HR 40 to be passed through the House and on to the Senate.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that sermon. Yes. I think we need to pass the offering tray for that. Amen. Let the church say amen.
Amen.
Well, I know we're a little over time, but we just had so much to unpack this evening. This is a week before the election and our last show before the election. And we've got another comment here. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. Okay, so he put a link in there. Do unto others as you have them do unto you. Amen. Yeah. That is the golden rule. And Ruben, you were spot on because, God does not want us to be ignorant.
Right.
He wants us to be ignorant. So we can't go to the polls being ignorant. And we've got to use our common sense and get educated. Like, Otis has been saying the entire time of the show is that, inform yourself, equip yourself. there's plenty of material to go out and read, go to their website and understand who they are and who and what they represent. Right? Yeah. So
Can I just say,
go ahead, and we'll wrap up.
one last thing. There are a number of organizations. There's Black Votes Matters. There is People's Action. There is Community Change. There are a number of organizations that do voter education. But one of the things that we need to have happen is people who already know who they're going to vote for. You can go and you can volunteer at these places, and you can make phone calls, and you can help knock on doors. You can do because voting is part of it, but there's another part, and they need people on the ground. There's nothing that changes a person's vote as than a one-on-one communication, to be able to say, hey, well, this is what I believe. Let me tell me why you're thinking about voting this way. And they give you, they help you coordinate the talking points on how to talk, so you won't be so nervous when you're talking to people. But we need everybody, all hands on deck, for whatever side you're going to vote for. We need you to get on those to help volunteer. Again, Black Votes Matters, People's Action, Community Change. There may be some folks in Texas, some organizations there also that you can get out and help change and vote.
And one last question. Thank you for that, Ruben. What are your feelings? I want to ask my panelists, and then we'll wrap up. What are your feelings on the stability of the blue wall? Do you think the blue wall's in jeopardy, or what do you guys feel about that?
Let me just say, I think the blue wall will stand the test of time. And I think that due to early voting that we've seen, and if you just look at the lines, I'm so proud to see so many African Americans in line voting and calling and actively participating. I think that she will take Wisconsin. I think that she will prevail in Philadelphia. And I certainly think that she will prevail in all of the battleground states. I'm just going to be that optimistic. And based upon what Mr. Eckels have just said, we all have the intrinsic ability to transform dark yesterdays into bright tomorrows. Therein lies our hope for a better tomorrow and our hope for a great future.
Great. Yes. Thank you for that.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Dr. Laurie, can you please expound on what Mr. Eckels said? What is your standpoint on galvanizing the Black men?
Oh, I think it's critically important that we give them reasons as to why they should vote Democratic. And I have to just be very honest. My choice is Kamala Harris because of the future, because of the economic opportunity. And when we have Black men who feel that nothing is really being done for them, let's look at the general overview. You have health insurance, you have Obamacare. That gives you the opportunity to get very good health care. If you have a job, unemployment rate is at an all-time low. It's down to 4.1. So anyone who wants a job can get a job. So you look at the idea of getting $50,000 as a down payment towards a business, and $25,000, I think, to help you purchase a home. Those things, we may not see them directly as for Black men, but they help us. They help the African American community. So when I encounter African American men, I'm very quick to point those issues out. And our future does lie with the Democratic Party, because they have consistently shown over time that they've done what's in our best interest.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I want you to leave some final comments as well. What are your thoughts on the blue wall? How can we maintain it? And what should women do to effectuate change and encourage Black men or men of color to do the right thing?
Well, I'm glad that you asked about the blue wall, because it did fail us one time.
Yes, yes, it did. You that.
We're looking for it to come back, and it came back to being a blue wall in 2020, right?
Yeah.
And 2024, you're seeing all the efforts in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And coincidentally, what really helps us out there is that there's Senate races going on as well, too. So Wisconsin got Tim Baldwin, Michigan's got Elisa Slotkin, and then Pennsylvania's got Bob Casey. And so we're trying to keep those seats as well, too, to be blue. So that's going to help with the money that's there. I feel fairly confident in it, but, you know, The game never ending until it's played on November 5th. So we'll see what happens. And I think also too with men, we've asked women to do a lot. It's time for men to step up.
Well, that's true.
And it's time
Amen.
for Black and Latino men as well too to step up. And it's time for just men to step up and take charge and making sure that they're taking their household to go vote and things like that.
True.
Not that they're not doing it already, but we could do it more. Because remember, again, yes, I did say Black men are voting, but guess who's voting more than us? Black women. So we do have we are competitive by nature. We can go meet our sisters and go vote as well too. But women have done a great job of encouraging sons and nephews and godsons and all of that and all of the above to go vote. So that's what we just have to do, is just continually encourage one another to go vote. Get 5 people that you know is on the fence. Try to educate them as much as you can, so that way they can go vote and go have those uncomfortable conversations, because our freedoms are on the line.
Our freedoms are on the line. Well,
yes, indeed.
Ruben, any last final thoughts that you want to close out with?
Well, my brother, he talked about Texas is the battleground and the fountain, and many times the place where many things started. But if you remember, after the decision by the Supreme Court on abortion, overturning Roe versus Wade, the first place they went to was Kansas, in my hometown, and you saw Kansas basically uphold the rights for women, and it was because folks saw that that they had to come together. Those Republican women in the state of Kansas had to come together with liberal women and a gay community and Black and brown community to make sure that they upheld that right. And so I believe that is still what is happening across America. Folks are understanding that it is their daughters, it is their wives, it is their mothers that are going to be impacted by Trump's and the rights in their if they overturn and bring the abortion ban laws across the country. So that is huge, and that's galvanizing people across the country. But also, as I said, there's strolls to the polls. The Divine Nine is out there doing that thing. They are registering people to vote all across the country. You have an organization, a number of organizations, La Raza, others that are standing up in California. There's an Asian organization that is registering people to vote. So there is a serious blue wall that's out there. And I like when you say blue wall, because that's my Phi Beta Sigma brothers, blue. And so therefore, there's a blue wall that's out there. In Philadelphia, I know there's a Power Incorporated that is doing an incredible job in that battleground state. And so we have the ground troops. We just need, but what I love about the Harris side is they're saying that we're going to fight like we're behind. So we're going to continue to say we need to have more Black men voting. We need to have that. So they're fighting like they're behind. And so I'm digging that strategy.
Amen. Wonderful job. I want to thank you to all of my panelists. Thank you guys. You've done a phenomenal job. Great discussion. And we might be neck and neck or a little behind in the races, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to walk by faith and not by sight. That's what we're going to do. So I just want to encourage our viewing audience to go back and replay this video. Listen to all the wonderful commentary and insights that our well-educated, intelligent panelists have shared with you all, because it'll help steer you in the right direction. We're not going to tell you who to vote for, because some of us are a little agnostic, but I think you know who CJ and I and Dr. LAUREE and Otis is supporting. But do the right thing and take advantage of your constitutional right to go and vote, because your vote does matter. Your vote is your voice. So thank you all again for tuning in tonight. Thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Next week is the election. So love you. Take care. And be sure to follow us and like us on social media. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Definitely.
Yes. We are closing.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Bye-bye.
Bye, all.